The twin suns of Eloria Prime bathed the crystalline spires of its capital in a serene, violet light. To most of the galaxy, it was a symbol of refinement and order, a civilization that had mastered diplomacy, efficiency, and controlled conquest. But beneath the shimmering facade, worry had begun to take root. A quiet rot spreading to the highest echelons of command. Reports had surfaced from Crave X-9, a planet categorized as a death world, where contact with an exploratory Elorian battalion had been lost without a trace. Admiral Lysar stood motionless before the holoscreen, watching a looping feed from the last surviving probe. The footage was distorted, broken by static and radiation bursts, but its horror remained unmistakable. Screams. Shadows tearing through fortified exo-armor. A brief glimpse of a monstrous machine, forged in metal and fire, with crude terror markings scorched across its hull. Then silence. They were torn apart, murmured High Counselor Seraph, unable to meet Lysar's eyes. By primitives. Lysar did not reply. She studied the last freeze frame, an Elorian soldier, half his helmet shattered, reaching toward the sky with bloodied hands as a human combat drone descended from above. The timestamp was barely an hour after surface contact. Not primitives, she said finally. Predators. In the weeks that followed, diplomatic channels were opened, then ignored. Eloria's delegation attempted every protocol, every gesture of peace, concession, and curiosity. What little response came from the humans was cryptic at best. A warning in ancient Terran dialects, fragments of translated texts referencing ancient gods' wrath, an unsettling phrase that repeated across all intercepted broadcasts. Mercy is earned, not owed. The High Council dismissed it as posturing. Lysar did not. She petitioned for reconnaissance, reinforcements, even retreat. All were denied. Then came the second strike. Valir Station, an orbital refinery nestled within neutral space, fell silent. 30,000 personnel. Gone. The station's emergency beacon activated only once, to play back a short transmission in perfect Elorian. This is consequence. Panic spread. The Council's serene deliberations turned to shouting matches. Allies demanded answers. Systems under Elorian rule began arming for revolt. Eloria, long the hard diplomacy, found itself clutching at the idea of control as it crumbled between its fingers. Lysar's request for military activation was finally approved. Fleets were mobilized. Warships with polished hulls and ceremonial insignias surged toward Deathworlder territory. The operation was codenamed Veil of Grace, a name Lysar found bitterly ironic. 3 days into the campaign, contact with the First Fleet was lost. This time, no footage remained. No distress calls. Just a void where once the stars had been mapped. Lysar gathered the remaining fleet commanders in the war chamber. Around her floated the projections of admirals, their expressions ranging from concerned to outright terrified. She took a breath. They are not fighting a war. They are cleansing a threat. We are that threat. You suggest surrender? Scoffed Admiral Hellenix from the Draconis Reach. We are the apex of civilization. These savages burn planets. They burn only what resists, Lysar countered. That is what we must understand. Every Elorian colony that declared neutrality has been left untouched. The Deathworlders target only what defies their warnings. One admiral laughed bitterly. Warnings? I've seen nothing but slaughter. Because we ignored them. The war chamber fell silent. Outside, the stars pulsed quietly, oblivious to the fate of empires. In desperation, the Council issued a final transmission to the Deathworlder fleet. One of open surrender, reparations, and unconditional retreat from contested zones. The message was broadcast across multiple channels, in every Terran dialect, paired with gestures of peace encoded into Elorian diplomatic patterns. No response came. Instead, a single ship appeared above Talvarin, the jewel of Eloria's outer colonies. It did not fire. It hovered in low orbit for 13 hours before releasing a black sphere. The sphere descended gently, slow enough for every camera to track. When it landed, it unfolded. Inside was a child. A Terran child, no older than 8 cycles, scarred, silent, holding a sign. You made us this. Across the galaxy, the image spread like wildfire. Eloria's public, once stoic and loyal, turned. Protests ignited. Military bases were overrun. The Council ordered martial law. Lysar, stationed on her flagship Celestia's End, watched it all unfold with hollow eyes. "Are they breaking us?" her aide whispered beside her. "No," Lysar said. "They're showing us the mirror." That night, Lysar walked alone to the observation deck of her ship. The stars stretched out before her in cold, indifferent beauty. She thought of her home, her people, her empire, and then she thought of the message. "You made us this." She didn't sleep. At dawn, the long-range scanners lit up with warnings. Hundreds, no, thousands, of ships appearing at the edge of the system. No formations. No call signs. Just shadow after shadow blotting out the starlight. The Deathworlder fleet had arrived. The first hail was audio only. A flat, uninflected voice speaking in standard galactic syntax. "Eloria, you beg for mercy. Now watch." Then silence. The first Death World was a mistake. At least, that's how the Galactic Archives recorded it. A rogue classification. Uninhabitable. Marked extreme hazard and unknown life. Yet within its violent storms, tectonic fury, and predator-rich biosphere, life had not only survived, it had thrived. Humans were not the galaxy's first intelligent species, nor the most advanced, but they were something new. Something that did not fit the mold of civility and reason upon which empires like Eloria were built. Their arrival on the interstellar stage was not with trumpets or treaties. It began with a distress signal. A mining colony on the edge of neutral space had issued a general SOS. When a nearby trade vessel responded, it found the station under siege by a species no one had catalogued, wearing gear pieced together from wreckage and bone. The attackers had coordinated with brutal precision, striking where defenses were weakest, adapting in real time. The defenders had mistaken them for savages. Only after the dust settled and an intelligence sweep commenced did the truth reveal itself. They were human. From that moment on, curiosity turned to unease. Inquiries were sent, ambassadors dispatched. But the humans did not host embassies. They had no central council, no governing body to bribe or coerce. Instead, scattered colonies across hazardous worlds shared encrypted communiques, bound not by borders but by a shared ethos, survival through strength, trust earned in fire. They called themselves the Children of Terra, born from the cradle of a planet racked by chaos. Their culture bore no resemblance to Eloria's precision or the Varelian Concord's philosophical idealism. Humanity had known extinction countless times, through plague, through war, through environmental collapse. Each time they clawed back. They had no myths of paradise, only stories of resistance. On a death world, mercy wasn't divine. It was a decision made with a knife in one hand and a shield in the other. One such man stood aboard the command vessel Leviathan Ash. Marshal Kale Voss, commander of the advanced spear of the Deathworlder fleet, was not a man shaped by rank or ceremony. His armor bore no polish. His face, obscured by an adaptive helmet, was known to only a few. He had been born in the ash barrens of post-collapse Earth during the time of firestorms. Raised by veterans, trained by survivors, he carried no love for conquest, only the necessity of consequence. Beside him, his second-in-command, Renido, watched the readouts from the fleet's edge. They had entered Elorian outer space. The armada stretched behind them like a wound across the stars, silent, hungry, resolved. "They'll expect negotiations," Ren said quietly. "They forfeited that right when they ignored our dead," Kale replied. Ren didn't argue. She remembered Cravex 9. She remembered the Elorian cleanup squads arriving late, finding only charred soil and blackened bones. No apologies, no acknowledgments. "They don't understand what we are," she said finally. "They will." The fleet moved without fanfare. Each ship ran on dark protocols, communication silent, signals cloaked. The Deathworlders knew better than to announce their arrival. Fear was its own kind of diplomacy. But even within their own ranks, questions lingered. Not about the cause. No Deathworlder questioned the need to act, but about the line between vengeance and justice. Many of the younger recruits had never seen Earth, had never breathed its poisonous winds or stared down starvation with bloodied teeth. They had grown up on moons shaped by trauma, on vessels built to house entire generations. They knew pain, but not the root. Cale had seen it. He had lived it, and he made sure they never forgot. He accessed the fleet's memory archive. Instantly, a holographic series of preserved history flooded the command deck. Footage of Earth's burning skies, riots, extinction-level threats survived through sheer will, fragments of humanity's long, agonizing path to the stars. These were not images of glory. They were records of desperation. Our peace was purchased in blood. Cale spoke aloud, not for Ren, but for the silent crew listening across encrypted channels. We offered alliance. We offered warning. Eloria chose pride. Messages had been sent, of course. Warnings encoded in the galactic lingua franca. Even a recovered transmission from an Elorian official describing humans as a regrettable infestation. That one had made the rounds quickly. Still, there were some on the Deathworlder Council who questioned the scale of the fleet's mobilization. What if this was the moment that shaped the galaxy's future? What if, by responding with fire, humanity sealed its image as monsters? Cale disagreed, not because he thirsted for war, but because he had learned the language of power. In this galaxy, kindness was weakness unless it followed terror. Mercy, without consequence, was an invitation to repeat atrocity. And so, the fleet advanced. Each vessel had its own purpose. Some carried drones programmed to disable planetary infrastructure without a single casualty. Others bore AI designed to infiltrate and expose the darkest corners of enemy strategy. And a few, the oldest, most battle-scarred ships, carried something more potent than weapons: witnesses, survivors from the Elorian attacks, broken veterans who had seen their kin turn to ash beneath orbital strikes. Men, women, and children, trained now not for war, but for memory. One of them, a girl named Elin, barely 14, stood in the observation dome of the Leviathan Ash. She had once lived on a fringe colony, where the soil cracked like parchment and predators howled through the night. Her village had been annihilated by an Elorian preemptive strike. Deemed a potential insurgent site, she had survived by hiding beneath a corpse. Now, she stood beneath the stars, eyes hard, posture unshaking. Ren approached her, hesitating before speaking. "You're not required to be here." Elin didn't respond at first. Her gaze never left the starlight. "When I was small," she said quietly, "I used to think stars were promises, that everyone was a place we'd never have to fear. And now, they're just watchers. Cold, silent." Ren felt the words settle like dust on bone. "What do you want to see when we reach Eloria?" Elin finally looked at her. "I want them to see us. And know it's already too late." There was no hate in her voice. No fury. Only certainty. Ren turned and walked away. But the image of the girl lingered in her mind long after. Cale watched the data streams. The Elorian fleet had begun moving. Clumsy rush deployments. He recognized desperation. They still believe a show of force might deter violence. He keyed in a fleet-wide transmission. "This is not conquest," he said. "This is remembrance." Every colony they erased, every voice they silenced, every plea they mocked. We are not here for their destruction. We are here for their education. The comms went silent. Far ahead, the planet Talvarin rotated beneath its sun, unaware of the shadows soon to fall upon it. Cale narrowed his eyes. Let them remember what they made. The stars over Talvarin dimmed before the sensors registered their betrayal. One by one, Elorian satellites blinked out, not with fire or impact, but silence. Precision interference. Holographic illusions disrupted. Signal towers frozen mid-transmission. Then came the first shape, vast, obsidian, casting its shadow over the capital like the blade of an executioner. Panic erupted before the first shot was even imagined. Inside the Planetary Defense Command, Prefect Daron Vey snapped at every incoming report, his voice growing hoarse. No visible weapons fired. No energy signatures. What are they doing? His aides answered with silence or stammering uncertainty. The Deathworlder fleet had arrived without declaration, without demand. There was no battle formation, no conventional pattern. Instead, they drifted like sentient storms, positioning themselves with an eerie calm, surrounding the planet not as conquerors, but as judges. Above them, aboard the Leviathan Ash, Marshal Cale Voss watched the data streams unfold. Every defensive frequency had been compromised, every Elorian command decrypted before it could even finish transmission. Their systems were transparent, as if Cale had designed them himself. In truth, he hadn't, but he had studied them, lived through their impact. He turned to Wren. "Deploy Phase 1. She gave a crisp nod, and the command flowed through the fleet like a breath. Across Talvrin, the infrastructure began to fail. First, the water filtration plants ceased operation. Minutes later, power grids across the hemisphere blinked out. Environmental regulators followed, then atmospheric transports. Hospitals reverted to emergency backups. Eloria's shining jewel began to sweat and cough beneath the weight of invisible pressure. Cale did not smile. This wasn't vengeance, it was extraction. Extraction of pride, of illusion, of control. The same things Eloria had stolen from the worlds it subjugated. On the ground, Prefect Vase stumbled through a command bunker thick with static and smoke. "Why aren't they attacking?" he demanded. "Why cripple and wait?" One of the younger officers, barely into his first rotation, looked up from a cracked screen. "They want us to turn on each other." And they did. As systems collapsed, ration stations overflowed. Emergency corridors became battlegrounds. Citizens turned on soldiers, soldiers on officials. The Elorian ideal, that order through intelligence would outlive chaos, fracture with terrifying speed. Above, the Deathworlders watched, recorded, broadcast. In the council chambers of Eloria Prime, where the high blood ministers once debated the morality of conquest with clinical detachment, now there was only noise. A feed of Talvrin's collapse played in real time. The screams, the looting, the crumbling myth of supremacy. Admiral Lysar stood at the edge of the room, arms folded, untouched by the panic. She had warned them. She had pleaded for caution. Now, her silence screamed louder than any accusation. "They're monsters," rasped Minister Vire, sinking into a chair with trembling fingers. "They're enjoying this." Lysar turned her gaze toward him, cold and steady. "No, if they enjoyed it, they'd let you believe you had a chance." A murmur swept the room as a new signal pierced the chaos. Not a Deathworlder transmission. A civilian message, spontaneous, desperate, and raw. A group of Talvrin citizens, armed with stolen weapons and broken armor, had stormed a government safe zone. They were broadcasting live. "Your war is not ours," the leader said, face halflit in the flicker of a dying energy core. "You brought this on us. We choose surrender." The Deathworlder fleet responded instantly. A single ship descended, not sleek, not elegant, brutal, rust-colored, scarred from wars no record kept. It hovered low over the city center, then opened its bay doors. Nothing emerged but sound. A simple voice, unaccented, emotionless. "You may leave." And thousands did. The broadcast continued, showing columns of civilians walking away from Elorian strongholds, unmolested by Deathworlder drones that floated silently like watchful ghosts. For the first time in Eloria's history, surrender became an act of defiance against their own leaders. In orbit, Cale leaned forward, marked the safe corridors. "Do not fire unless fired upon." Wren hesitated. Some of them may still be armed. Loyalists hiding among them. Cale didn't blink. Mercy is earned in motion. Let them earn it. Across the fleet, targeting systems adjusted, restraint protocols activated. For all their ruthlessness, Deathworlders did not crave indiscriminate destruction. They chose their targets with mathematical precision, each strike designed not for shock, but for clarity. When the Talvrin Central Defense Station launched a volley of missiles into orbit, 2 ships responded. In under 5 seconds, the station ceased to exist. No crater, no fire, just dust and memory. The footage was played across every Elorian world still listening. The message was clear. Resistance would not be punished. It would be erased. Back on the Leviathan Ash, a soft chime echoed through command deck. Wren raised an eyebrow as she read the incoming transmission. It's from Lysar, personal channel. Kale gave a nod, and her image flickered to life before him. Her hair was unkempt, face drawn, eyes no longer radiant with pride, but sharp with focus. "You've broken Talvern without a single invasion," she said. "That wasn't a siege. That was recalibration." "We didn't come for their bodies," Kale replied. "We came for their beliefs." Lysar tilted her head, studying him. "You want the council to beg?" "No, I want them to witness." A long pause followed. "There's still a chance for peace," she said carefully. Kale's voice was iron. "Peace is what you call the silence after genocide. We offer consequence." And then, without ceremony, she ended the transmission. Later that night, Kale stood in the observation bay alone. The stars were unusually clear, the gas storms quiet. Below, the lights of Talvern were fewer now, not because of destruction, but because of surrender. "Do you think it's enough?" Wren asked behind him. He didn't turn. "Not yet." From her pocket, Wren retrieved a small data crystal and slid it into the console. A hologram shimmered to life. Grainy footage of a small Elorian village, long since leveled. Children screaming. Soldiers laughing. Orders given in clipped tones. She didn't need to say what it was. Kale watched the loop once. Then again. "I want them to see this next," he said quietly. "All of them. Every council chamber. Every minister. Let them choke on the truth they buried." Below, Talvern exhaled. Not in fire, but in surrender. And in the stillness, the Deathworlder fleet waited. Not for orders. Not for conquest. But for the next question. Who would choose mercy before it was too late? Eloria Prime surrendered at dawn. Not with fanfare or parades of dignitaries, but in a hollow chamber lined with ash-colored banners and fractured pride. The council had fractured. Some fled into the stars, others into hiding. A few chose silence over resistance, and silence. The Deathworlders accepted. No fire rained from the sky. No cities burned. Yet across the planet, statues were torn down, not by invaders, but by the Elorians themselves. The people had learned something far crueler than war, the death of an idea. Marshal Kale Voss stood at the threshold of the Prime Hall, its marble doors still bearing the golden crests of the Empire. Behind him, the city was quiet. Not ruined, not conquered, just changed. The Deathworlders had landed in precise intervals. No soldiers marched. No victory cries. Only machines, silent and unarmed, walking the roads as sentinels of a new truth. Inside the hall, Admiral Lysar waited, alone. She bore no weapons, only the weight of survival. Her once pristine uniform was torn, half charred at the hem. Her eyes were bloodshot, but steady. Kale entered without ceremony. The doors closed behind him. "So this is it," Lysar said, voice rasping. "This is consequence," Kale replied. They stared at each other. A pause stretched between empires. She did not beg. He did not threaten. "I read your transmissions," she said at last. "Watched the footage. Heard the stories." He nodded. "I never ordered the strikes on the fringe colonies. I argued against them." "I believe you," he said. "Then why?" "Because belief doesn't rewrite graves." Silence again. "I stayed to witness," Lysar said. Kale studied her, not with hatred, but with understanding. There was something in her posture, something Deathworlders understood too well. The stillness of someone who knew they had lost, but chose to remain anyway. "You're not our enemy," he said. "You're our mirror." She blinked, unsteady. "Then what happens now?" Kale turned and gestured. A small group entered. A pair of civilians from Talvern, a Deathworlder AI unit, and Elin, the girl who had survived the Elorian cleansing years before. Elin stepped forward. No weapons, no anger. She carried a single object, a holocube, flickering weakly. "This is everything," she said softly. "Your archives, your actions, your voices." The cube activated. The room lit up with 1,000 scenes. Cities leveled, prisoners silenced, cries for help drowned in static. Faces once hidden behind rank, now immortalized in history. It's not for revenge, Kale said. It's for memory. Lysar stood among the ghosts of her people's sins. Her hand trembled. This will destroy us. No, Kale replied. This will let you rebuild. Outside, the Deathworlder fleet did not descend further. Ships pulled away from low orbit, silent engines drawing back toward the void. They did not occupy. They did not colonize. They vanished into the black they had come from. Across the stars, other civilizations watched. The Valari Pact signed immediate pacts of neutrality. The Drati syndicates disarmed 3 border stations without being asked. No worlds resisted. Not because they feared annihilation, but because they had seen the cost of forgetting humanity's warning. On Earth, no celebrations echoed. There were no banners or monuments. The fleet returned to silence, to rebuilding the broken worlds they called kin. In the aftermath, Lysar remained on Eloria Prime. She walked the streets in anonymity, helping pull down the statues she once defended. No one stopped her. No one thanked her. She understood. Elin remained, too, not to lead, but to teach. In a small, unadorned building at the edge of the city, she opened the first center for memory doctrine, a place not of hatred, but of truth. Children came to hear the story of what pride had done and what humility had saved. Years passed. No further Deathworlder fleets were seen. Their dreadnoughts became legends, their emissaries ghosts. Yet every empire remembered the sky going dark above Talvin, and the girl who held a sign that read, "You made us this." In time, a monument was built, not on Eloria, but on the moon of a neutral world once caught in the crossfire. It bore no names, no flags, just a single inscription, etched in obsidian. Mercy is earned. And beside it, carved deep into the rock, a second line, added decades later by a hand no one claimed. And sometimes it is given anyway.